Hey Paul,
Hey,
before
Steev.
we talk about Somergloom Festival, when you guys are planning the third night at Crystal Ballroom in Somerville, I was hoping we could give our listeners a little background on you and the band. Firstly, where are you from, and what were some of your like first? I know it's a funny question, but I ask everyone this: first experiences listening to music. Like, where did you grow up, and do you remember the early things that you heard musically?
Oh, for sure. So I grew up in Belmont, right next to Cambridge. And Belmont is not a exciting place to be for a young kid. So I was in Cambridge as much as I could be. Walk to the end of the street, get the bus line, Harvard Square, whatever. Um, and I mean, hey, if you're asking where it started with my clock radio. As a kid, WZLX, WBCN, and rock and roll cassette tapes, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles. For me, this wouldn't be where Morne comes from, but for me, the Beatles was my Bible growing up. With my parents, my dad's old records, sitting on the floor with Mystery Tour, Pepper, Revolver, Abbey Road, just that blew my mind wide open. And specifically when I heard Helter Skelter, and again, I'm talking like 3 years old. You asked, so that hit me in the gut. I never felt, I got this feeling that I'll never forget, and I was like, this is what I need to do with the rest of my life. And then how it goes. You
So your
just
parents were your father and your mother too were into music?
They weren't actually, my mother's a visual artist. She did this lovely piece behind me. It's a quilt.
I
So,
love it.
so I was exposed to, art and creativity was always fostered from my mom. My dad's not a creative person at all, in the slightest. He's an engineer, but coming up in the 60s, 70s, obviously, they just had records, but they didn't listen to them. So I dig through them and I'm like, what's this? Skip past the Eagles and get to the Beatles, and my dad loves the Eagles, but anyway. Uh, but then again, like I said, with the radio, that's where I'm falling asleep and waking up hearing Zeppelin and hearing Hendrix and um, Pink Floyd and hearing the guitar, and before I even knew what a guitar
So it was
was.
the classic rock that got you.
For me, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, once, I'm 9 years old and you discover Guns N' Roses and Metallica, I mean, then, it goes off from there. And then, discovering, the stuff that was happening around Boston in the 90s, and, the rock records, you know. So in high school, once I heard Only Living Witness, that was another level. And I think all that can be said. I've always been attracted to melody, in a big way. Um, Melodic. It doesn't necessarily need to be singing per se, but as long as there's a melody there, that's what really draws me in.
Belmont's kind of like one of those places that's kind of hidden. You never really drive through Belmont. You
You
always
don't need
drive
to.
around it. I heard
Yeah,
there's a really good record store there from our mutual friend Alvin Long actually told me this.
this is
And
new.
yeah, have you been to that store in Belmont?
I have want list. It's awesome. My Without getting into it, it's been sad to see the same um, destruction of culture and development happening there, that's happening everywhere, where, the spot that used to be a Friendlies, I mean, talk about culture, but, when I was growing up, it looked very different. Now it's a friggin' giant high-rise condo. Um, and it's a very bougie town in general, so of course the businesses that come in, not for me, whatever. And my parents to me said, this is around the corner from where I grew up. My parents said, hey, there's a record store. I'm like, where? They're like, right here in Cushing Square. I'm like, what? And yeah, Want List. It's a small little spot, and every time I've gone in there, it's a really high concentration of great stuff. Um, I've had to stop myself every time I've gone in. I start working my way around the bins, and I'm like, all right, and at my point. So
I'm gonna get there one of these days, man. I'm a big record store guy, but I end up spending money that I don't have whenever I go to record stores.
yeah, it's dangerous.
When did you start playing? Was the guitar the first thing for you?
Well, technically, actually, I mean, the guitar has been my instrument since I was 9, but
Hmm.
I technically did start with a bit of piano, um, and recorder I was forced to, which I ended up breaking over the coffee table because I was like, Mom, I'm not into this thing. But the piano, there was actually a piano in the living room when my folks moved in, because they'd bought it from an elderly couple in the 80s. So, when back in the day, it was you had a piano in the room before, it was a TV or even a radio.
Right, right.
Um, and so I had no idea what I was doing, but on a piano, you don't need any skill to begin. You can just touch the keys and sound comes out. So, of course, I didn't know what it was then, but when I hit two notes together that now I know was a power chord, I was again, that was a similar thing to that Helter Skelter, similar, we're talking, maybe 5 years old or something, and just hearing that sound, I was like, wow. And I was an avid reader as a kid. And I said to my mom one day, I understand reading words, but what the heck is reading music? And she said, "Oh, well, let's sign you up for piano and recorder lessons." I was like, "That's not what I was asking, but yeah, when I was 9, then I said, I don't know where this came from. I just said to my mom, why am I not playing the guitar? And she said, let's go get you one. And again, this, is the privilege of growing up in a family like this who wanted to foster the creativity. So 9 years old, I got a little mini acoustic, little nylon string acoustic, started taking lessons from a wonderful, wonderful man named Tom Young, who was just teaching, through my school. Um, and then when I was 12, I got my first electric Wurlitzer on Com Ave from a guy named Ken Barclay, who played in a band called El Camino.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'll never forget it, man. He got me into it. He sold me the guitar, sold me my first amp. I still have and play those almost every day. And he actually got me into the Middle East when I was 12 years old or something to see my first show. And again, all downhill from there.
Were there other bands before Morn?
For me,
Yeah.
I was actually never in a like full-time band really until Morne. I kind of was a hired gun, so to speak, which again just came from, pushing and pushing and pushing to get somewhere musical, find something, and finally finding New Alliance, in my 20s or whatever. And still, for years and years, just pushing brooms and cleaning toilets, changing light bulbs, just doing whatever I could to help the
Was
aforementioned
this Cambridge?
EMF.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. See, I was in Pittsburgh for 5 years, from about 2013 to 19. So that's probably why we didn't cross paths very much.
yeah, that would have been sort of the second half of the time I was there, and that would be the first tour I went on was 2011, I believe, filling in for Mike Gowell and Phantom Glue. Um, and again, just a weird, weird set of circumstances. Buddy broke a finger, called me up, stuff like this. Um, Someone couldn't do a tour, and eventually got kind of pulled in. And then so but it was always a temporary thing, in for a show or two, in for a tour or something, and then so that's kind of how I came up.
That's interesting. Can you talk about what you knew about Morn before you joined and then lead that into how you ended up becoming a full-time member of the band?
Yeah, again, it's all part of the same thread here where it was again through being a new alliance, and of course we had all sorts of bands from the area coming through, kind of stringing together the save up, a few $100, getting in the studio for a couple days. And one day Ethan came to me, Ethan Dussault,
Hmm.
head engineer at the time, and said, Rajpal, you should make a point of being in for this band coming up. I think you'd really dig them. And I looked at the calendar and saw Morne, like blocked out. They had a week blocked out and another one, recording, mixing, etc. So immediately could see like, oh, this band is not saying other bands aren't serious, but you know what I mean? It's like, this band's in here, to really do something or whatever. And so that's where I popped in as a fly on the wall. This would be when they were making Asylum.
Hmm.
And so that was my first experience with them. Hung out in the studio, doing my thing. And then when they came back a couple years later to do Shadows, did the same, and so that's how I was introduced to them.
So you had a long history of hearing the band play in the studio, and
Yeah, I mean, again, it was, kind of, you're moving in and out of who's in the studio, week to week or whatever. But again, definitely they made an impression on me as a, professional band that was, up to something, really focused on what they were doing. And then when after Shadows, when it got to time, that they needed another guitar player, they asked John Taft, and they're looking around, who's around, who's available, whatever. And um, John said, "Hey, give Rajpal a try," and again, all downhill from there.
I love John Taft, man. Great guy. I got to work with him a few times. Coming of Winter, that was when you joined before that record?
No, so Coming of Winter, well, okay, Coming of Winter is the first track on Shadows, so that's the
Shadows, I'm sorry. So,
but the first release I'm on is a little tape we put out called Coming of Winter. So maybe that's what you're thinking of.
yeah, I think I saw that on Discogs, and
Yeah.
that's where
So
I got that.
that's a bootleg of a or official bootleg, it's my recorder, but of that I think was my third show at the band, December 2014, Middle East, upstairs. Um, awesome show, awesome night, sold out. It was great. And again, one of my first shows with the band. So that was super cool. And so yeah, we put out a little limited cassette, again, if you want it, I think you got to go on Discogs now. But
Yeah.
so so that's the first, release I'm on, but the first album I'm on would be To the Night Unknown, which we made a few years later.
I'm going to jump ahead to Engraved with Pain, which is on Metal Blade Records. Let's start with the deal. How did the deal with Metal Blade come together? I'm a former, I don't know if you know this, probably not, but I worked at Metal Blade Records, but it was long before you guys were there. I
Sure.
was there in the late 80s, early 90s. So Brian's been a friend of mine for a long time. How did that whole deal come together? Who was it that signed you guys? Was it Brian?
So how I believe it happened, again, this communication wasn't happening through me, at the beginning and end of the day, it's Milos's
Mhm.
brainchild, Milos Kasan. And, he got contacted, and I believe what it was, so we played Roadburn in 2017, and I believe they had a rep at that show, who, one of their German reps who saw us, who had been a fan of the band, who, kind of went to bat for us and said, hey, we want to get these guys. So
So it
I'm all,
came through Europe.
it did. I mean, that was obviously it's, it's a privilege to play, these festivals. And you get a big audience at those things, because people are there for all kinds of stuff. So yeah. Um, they reached out and, we discussed it and said, hey, I mean, heck, let's give it a shot, right?
Yeah, because it's like a worldwide deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I think it was their German wing who reached out to us, but it's Metal Blade. So, that obviously is a name that people are familiar with, and again, exposure, I mean, it gets out there. Um, we can get records pressed through them and all that good stuff.
Can you talk about the songwriting process for Engraved with Pain? Did it evolve much since to the Night Unknown was the previous record? Did the writing evolve a lot at that point, or was it pretty much the same process?
I mean, I think the process is always pretty much the same, which is most of the time Milos comes in with a riff, and it's not a cerebral thing. I mean, we just start and play the riff, and j just play it and play it. And he'll have ideas in his head, kind of often conceptually about sort of the curvature of the song, maybe.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's we take our time. It's nothing contrived. It's nothing, okay, we want to do this or that or whatever. It's play the song, get to him. Then Billy Knockenhauer, our drummer, is he's a really great arranger, so and again, it's not like one person's sort of responsible for one thing or the other, but the two of them then will kind of sit and start to demo out on the computer and stuff like this. But generally, it evolves, I would say is the word. It evolves in the rehearsal space, kind of gets towards that thing that's in Milos's head that we all in that in playing. I think that's really important. It's crucially important to me, in rock and roll to actually play, in order to let the song kind of develop and find itself rather than, have it all be preconceived and sort of contrived that way.
Yeah, and these are long songs too, most of them, for
Yeah.
sure. How about the decision to work with Carl Ballou? I mean,
Kurt
from
Ballou.
Convert, Kurt. I'm sorry, Kurt. I don't know why I wrote Carl. I knew it was Kurt from
Okay.
Converge. I mean, he's got a great track record and everything, but how did that whole come together?
I mean, again, obviously his track record, Kurt Ballou is certainly, known for heavy music and also just, being a great engineer. And again, we worked with New Alliance in the past, and this time, with the Metal Blade thing, we had some more money to work with and kind of talked about it and said, hey, I mean, should we stay local? But again, Kurt is local. And said, this is the time to try it. Um, let's go for it. He's not terrifically expensive by any means, but it's a little more money. And and we know people who've worked with him, and he's he's known for obviously for Converge and the super heavy stuff, but if you go through his catalog, I mean it may all be heavy music per se, but there's a wide range there. He's got, I think, a wider palette than maybe some people give him credit for. And so so yeah, I mean we decided to give it a shot, and obviously, we're super happy with how it came out. And
Yeah, it's a great record. I spent a lot of time with that one this week. I knew I wouldn't be able to go through the whole catalog with you because trying to
you're
promote the
welcome.
show. But did you and Milosh collaborate? Do you collaborate a lot guitar wise? Like, is there a clear division of lead and rhythm roles, or is it just more of a shared kind of thing?
I mean, again, it's not anything predisposed or whatever. I am a lead player, again, growing up, as we said, with, Floyd and Zeppelin and Hendrix and all that. That's always just been, um, kind of where I've gone. But, Milos has played some leads here and there, some more, atmospheric stuff. But I mean, to simplify, generally, he will come up with the riff, like I said. We'll play it, and when, there is a space of like, okay, I think we, or he wants a solo here, or we, think it could use it. Um, 90% of the time that is me, but again, it could be him. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's whatever, like I said, how the song develops is what's most important.
Trying to figure out some of the influences. Well, you're talking about David Gilmour and Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix, but this is
That's
obviously,
me,
yeah, this is obviously a way heavier sound. I mean, what? I mean, is there boundaries on what you want to do with this sound, or is it just like we're just going to go balls to the wall here with the heaviness?
Definitely no boundaries. Again, definitely no, sort of preconceived notions. But Milos came from the crust punk scene in Europe in the 90s. Um, and he was definitely influenced by Misery a lot. He mentions that a lot. Amoebics, neurosis, which I think if you're going to really simplify it, I mean, that's a good, starting point. But again, we all listen to all sorts of stuff. We are all heavy music guys, I think, by nature. Um, so again, the classic rock stuff is really, me, how I came up. But in terms of the heaviness, it was rooted in, the heavy European crust punk stuff, and then just kind of slowed down, really, somewhere along the way.
I really like the second track, Memories Like Stone, and the video is fantastic. It's also very scary. Is that your goal to like really, or his goal, or the band's goal to frighten us?
No, no, we're not trying to scare anybody per se, but again, I mean, the world is a dark place, and we make the music that, I mean, you're just making art. It should, be a reflection of what's going on inside and outside, and again, the world's a dark place, man,
What
so I guess that's how it comes out.
what about the video? I mean, did you guys come up with the concept, or was there a director that said, this is what I want to do?
Um, so the video, we have a good friend, Hillary Jason, who is a veteran photographer. The first video we did was actually Wretched Empire, right before that, the Memories video, and that, I would say was a concept that came from her and Miłosz working together. Um, where again, we're definitely not trying to scare people or anything silly like that, but there is, a monochromatic sort of black and white, dark aesthetic there. So again, definitely not sitting down and like storyboarding anything or, having a director tell us to do anything, no way, but more atmosphere, I would say, vibe. But again, that's really, I would say, the two of them, kind of, button heads and collaborating and figuring stuff out and having definitely some ideas about where they want to go. And Hillary just killed it. I mean, she was not a video maker up until the Wretched video, and really blew us away with that.
I love it.
And yeah, it came out great. And then Metal Blade came to us and said, "Hey, cool, can we have another one?" I think in like a week or something. So it was like, all right. And so, again, there were some ideas I think that had been swirling around, and they just really made it happen.
Do you have like a product manager or someone specific at Metal Blade that you guys deal with?
Um, I don't think there's a product manager. Again, there's definitely a team, of folks that
Like Mike Faley or somebody? I know Mike too. I worked with Mike as
I
well.
haven't heard that name come up. Again, the correspondence is happening mostly, if not all, through Milosh.
Yeah.
Marcus Bart, I cannot say his last name, but it starts with a G. I believe he was the rep who saw us at Roadburn. Um, and there's a few people. Again, I'm honestly not privy to the whole team, but there's no sort of, oh, we, need this kind of product or that kind of look or that kind of thing or whatever.
Did you guys do a lot of live shows after that record came out?
Um, so yeah, I mean, finally got to tour. We got to do 3 tours last year. Uh,
Okay.
my little hesitation there was because COVID obviously, you know,
Yeah.
screwed everything up for everybody. But putting together the timeline, we recorded that at the end of COVID. So yeah, we got to last year do a short northern US Canada run.
Hmm.
and then got over to Europe twice, which was awesome in the summer, and then again last fall.
How do these songs like Memories like Stone and Fire and Dust translate live with their slow builds? And do you structure your live sets differently to account for those dynamics, or is it just something that you just play it like the record and
I mean, we're not trying to like sit down and say, oh, we need this kind of set or that kind of set. I mean, we get a time length, right?
Mhm.
Here. And again, with the songs being long as they are, I mean, you gotta figure out how to make, those songs fit in to the time slot. But of course, you're thinking about a flow, I mean, we like to, just have the music do the talking, and like anything, like a song, like a solo, like a lyric, whatever, you want it to have a natural, sort of flow to it, but nothing I would say more than that.
I think you mentioned you played Roadburn. I think you did Hellfest too.
Yeah, that's why what the June run last year was centered around. And generally, on the tours, the European tours anyway, there will be some fests along the way. And I think like most bands who do that, you get that offer and then say, okay, I mean, if we're going to go over there, let's build a little tour around it. So yeah, we've been lucky enough to be, on a handful of festivals,
Who are some of the bands that you've toured with?
We generally go out by ourselves,
Hmm.
but on this June one, we bumped up with Wormrot, um, which we weren't in the same van or anything, but after a couple shows, we linked up and we were, touring. Also, the last US one we did with Author and Punisher. Um, which those are both cool because I think both of those artists are very different from what we do, but there's a real, sort of common, again, just darkness or heaviness or whatever, for lack of a better word, that fits. It's boring when you see a tour and it's one band after the other who are all in the same sort of niche, I mean.
Yeah, I agree.
So we definitely, it's great to have some contrast there. So those are cool.
Do you personally enjoy touring more in Europe or in America?
They are two different things. I just feel blessed anytime I can get on the road. Again, ever since I was that kid, looking at Beatles records and hearing, those guitars screaming out of my tiny clock radio, it's been like, man, I'd love to do that. And really every tour, I would more say every tour is different, you know. Every night is different. So you can't really say,
I mean, there must be something that you really remember about one of the either the US or like a certain city or a country. Is there anything that like jumps right out at you from all this touring?
I mean, again, I really try to, and I don't think I have to try. It's just for me every night, Uh, you know, um, and I think that's really important if, you're maybe a younger band or whatever starting out. If you are, trying to find like kind of one experience, I think you're doing it wrong. I mean, to me, if we're, playing somewhere in the middle of freezing Canada and there's, not a ton of people there, that's awesome, and certainly the festivals stand out because it's just
Yeah,
such
of
an experience,
course.
to come out and play in front of thousands of people. But again, if you're, kind of putting your stake on that, you're going about it wrong. If you're playing for, the people, I think it's a privilege to have, to be able to play any show anywhere and have people come out and say that was awesome. I remember it every time.
I should have asked this earlier, but you mentioned New Alliance a lot, and that kind of led to you being in the band. How did you end up at New Alliance?
Um, Knocking on doors, I to go way back to the early 2000s. Again, before I knew Morne, I was working in a record store in Harvard Square, as you do when you get out of high school. And uh,
Or you
Mark,
wish to do.
yeah, until you do it and
It's
realize, well, this is awesome, but where's the money? Um, but way back then, actually, Mark Schleicher was over at Newbury
I
Comics,
love Mark.
and he would pop through, just, digging through the bins, whatever, and started chatting with him and just saying, hey, I don't know what I'm looking for. I know I'm looking to get, for rock and roll, you know what I mean? But again, nothing specific. And at that time, he mentioned to me, oh, my buddies are relocating. This would be when New Alliance was relocating from the Fenway to EMF, and they were
Yeah.
building at the time. Um, but still at that time, I mean, like, again, I was young, just out of high school, had some shit to figure out. But fast forward a few years, um, I'm working in Central Square, Whole Foods, and I'm working with a guy named Cam Ackland, who's,
Damn.
yeah, just the doctor. He's the freaking best. And so same thing, I could tell he was an old school head for sure. And talked to him the same way, and he mentioned the same name. He was like, "Oh, my buddy's got now." At that point, it was built a studio at EMF, and again, it still took years. Just working in the grocery store and being like, "Hey, man, you think we can get over and see that guy?" And he's a working father, so he'd be like, "Yeah, man, yeah, 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 we'll get you down." Then, oh shoot, I got to pick up my daughter, whatever. And one day he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, let me get you in touch with Alvin." And so it took a while, and if you believe in something, if you believe in anything, it's going to take a while, I
Did
mean,
did you work at that Whole Foods that's up the road from Inman Square?
yeah, I'm Prospect.
Yeah, I used to go in there all the time and talk to Cam whenever I was in town because he's an old friend of mine. I
Yeah.
go back all the way back to the prime movers, so going way back. That's cool, man. I really, I have a very strong connection with New Alliance, and I know all these people you're talking about, and it's fantastic that working there helped you get in this band. I love that story. That's great. Um, okay, so let's talk about Summer Gloom. When were you guys asked to play, and it something that you said we'll do it right away?
I don't know exactly, again, as I said, those requests and such generally go through Milosh, but um, you know, I can say, that I went to the one last year, Steven got Royal Thunder, which, I think is awesome.
Atlanta band, yeah.
And a bunch of bands. And so yeah, I don't know exactly when, but yeah, anything you get offered, obviously you sit down and look at it. Does it make sense time wise and whatever else is going on. And this time it did. So we're gonna do it.
Yeah,
It's gonna
you
be fun.
guys are playing day three with six other bands before Sumac and after Chapang.
Yeah.
They're so cool. It seems like a perfect slot.
Yeah, it's cool. Again, any slot's good, but that'll be cool. I mean, Chopin, being such a, frenetic, kind of tornado of an experience. And then, I think it's again a good contrast. What I like about these type of festivals is having a variety. Even if it's all within sort of heavy, that it's not all the same thing. By the time you get to the end, sometimes, people are bored. People want to get out of there. But I think this will be a good mix of stuff, and you know have one thing, and then we do our thing, and then Sumex can do their thing. So should be a good night.
I
August
love
9th.
the
Saturday.
Yeah, I love the venue too, Crystal Ballroom. Good place, man. One of my favorite new venues in the Somerville area for sure. JJ and Steven do a great job with this event. So you mentioned you went last year, so you're familiar with it. So you must be excited to do it. Especially you don't have to go too far. I imagine you live close to Somerville, right? You live in the city.
I don't anymore. I did, as long as I could. I was actually in Inman for a long time. Over the pandemic and such, I actually moved out to Central Mass, but my family's still in there, my band's still there. Obviously, I'm always in and back and forth. So it
Where
is
did
what
you move and where did you move to in Central Mass?
I'm out in the sort of Leominster Worcester air line there.
Yeah, you're north of Worcester. I'm south of Worcester. I'm living down in Webster now, which is
Okay.
Worcester County also. But if you take Route 12 all the way, you get to Leominster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know it's tough living out here when you like you I used to live in Somerville too when I wasn't in and out of state, but it's just fantastic. I wanted to talk to you about going back to your guitar influences and stuff because I find that the three people that you mentioned, Hendrix, Jimmy Page, and Gilmore, if you had to pick one of those three, would there be one that you'd say, that's my favorite? See, I know that Brian May and Jeff Beck are my two favorite guitar players. What about you? Is it a three-way tie?
Definitely not a three-way tie. I mean, those are some of the three that always everybody's going to kind of give you those same names, but there's a reason for that. So again, growing up, I was trying to assimilate as much as I could. Um, so the Three Kings, BB, Freddie, and Albert. I mean, obviously all the rock heavyweights.
Oh, so
Slash.
you went way back and listened to the early blues guys too. That's good.
Sure, I think in general, whether it's music or movies or art in general, history is important, going back and seeing where this stuff came from, finding the roots. You know, Again, being 9 years old, Slash was a god to me, and again the melody. But if I had to, and Brian May, the sonics of what he was doing, but if I have to pick one, it's definitely David Gilmour. It's definitely David.
Interesting.
And I've always, I've never wanted to be a shredder, ever. I in fact, when I was young in those formative years, purposefully cranked the strings up as high as they would go, use the heaviest string. I would order my own strings. I still do. To slow down, to, focus on bend, to focus on tone, to focus on, playing what counts, Gilmore, man. I mean, I can't, say that I play like him, but when I at the end of the day, when I kind of listen to how everything came together, um, I just he's on another level of just taste and um, you know.
I never get to talk about Pink Floyd much, so I'm going to take this opportunity to
Sure.
tell you that I love many of their records. Animals is my favorite. I'm a big Roger Waters fan for his writing, but there's no way you can discount David Gilmour's role. In fact, Dogs, I think, is some of the best guitar playing I've ever heard on any of anything. And that's saying a lot because there's so many different tracks. What about you? Do you have a favorite Pink Floyd album or songs that you really like?
You know, Again, there's such a wide range, which I think is great. So there's a lot to be found, certainly through Pink Floyd, but to pick one, the formative album for me was definitely Wish You Were Here.
Yeah, I love that record
And
too. Yeah.
and again, talking about in terms of guitar specifically, in the bends, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, I remember hearing that and really practicing, I mean, and again, this goes back to the Three Kings, but practicing one bend, getting it to sound, right in tune and maybe, bending, from the top down and like figuring out different ways to make one note sing, rather than ever practicing any scales or nonsense. And a lot of that came from Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Wish You Were Here. And again, the atmosphere and all that stuff.
I love that record too. You know, when I say I like Animals is my favorite, believe me, I don't discount the other records at all. Wish You Were Here would be right there next to Animals for me. You seem like you learned a lot about guitar playing from listening. Did you ever take lessons or anything?
So I did, as I mentioned back in those, early days, as we keep, talking about that guy, Tom Young was a teacher. And basically, how that would go is I ended up working with him from the time I was 9 till 18. And I would have a lesson once a week, and he would, he would give me fundamentals and things to work on. He was an acoustic player. But I always say then, but the majority of what I was doing came the other 6 days a week. Where again, I'm just listening to those records and trying to, I think, do whatever young kids doing, trying to play Guns N' Roses and Metallica and whatever. But I've always been an ear player. Again, I specifically have never wanted to be a practice scale, shredder. Don't want to be that. So I always focused on the intuitive, playing by ear and stuff. But I'm very grateful, to have had those lessons so that, I understand the basics of theory, but I purposefully make sure to not think about it when I'm playing, because if you're starting to think about the rules, you're playing rock and roll, you're in the wrong game.
Is there any modern day guitar players that you think, that really get your attention?
I mean, it's hard to say just because there's so much, right?
Yeah.
There's so much out there. There's so much to still be discovered. And now the book is wide open where you're not going to get a Gilmore or Hendrix or a Page anymore. You're not going to get one of those people where it's like, oh my God, you're doing something that's never been done. Um, but gosh, I'd probably have to think on that for a moment. I think it's more kind of bands that hit me, because again, that's what matters at the end of
Is
the
there
day.
something new that a specific new band or newer band that you're into these days?
Trying to think, just some looking over my records right now, so I'm looking over there because again, I honestly I don't. It's impossible to keep up with what's new. I'm always listening. I'm still listening all over the place, So, and it's not necessarily guitar. Last night I was listening to James Cotton record, blues harp. Um, you know, I'm sure, I'm blanking at the moment on like something specific. Um,
It's
some.
fine. I just figured I'd ask because I love talking about the old guys, because it's never going to be that good again. When Jeff Beck passed away, it was really sad because I feel like he was like, it was really the end of an era, because Jeff was so good. He could play blues, jazz, rock, the whole nine yards.
And it's funny, I don't know why I never got into Jeff Beck. And it's not because I don't like him per se. I just kind of never, again, there's so much music out there that it's impossible to get everything. And I got Truth somewhere in my stacks there. And
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
um but I don't know why. I never it just haven't got to him yet. And I'm sure I will one day, because again, he's one of those legends. But yeah.
Well, hey man, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. And I
Yeah.
think the
Thank you.
shows are going to be great next
Yeah,
week.
it's gonna be a great time. Again, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, that's great. I think the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah. And you guys are on the ninth.
We're on the 9th, yeah, again at Crystal Ballroom. So yeah.
Next to the last band to play Summer Bloom. Summer Gloom. I almost said Summer Bloom. Hey, thanks a lot, man.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me. I
All
appreciate it.
right. My pleasure.